All right, let's get right into it. We're taking a trip to central India, to a place called the National Chambal Sanctuary. Now, this is a truly vital river ecosystem, incredibly beautiful, but it's also ground zero for a pretty brutal high-stakes conflict.
So, this sanctuary is home to some of the planet's most unique and threatened animals. But what's wild is that their entire survival hinges on one single, seemingly ordinary thing in their habitat. Any guesses what that might be?
Yep, sand. I know, it sounds almost too simple, right? But the river's clean, pristine sandbanks and sandbars, they're literally the foundation of this entire ecosystem. It's where these animals nest, where they bask, where they live, and that very same sand has become the prize in a violent war.
To really get what's going on, you first have to understand just how precious this place is. So let's take a closer look at why the sanctuary is so important.
Okay, so here's something that's really interesting, and it actually complicates everything. The sanctuary isn't neatly tucked inside one state's borders. Nope, it's a protected river that winds its way through 3 different states: Rajasthan, Madhya Pradesh, and Uttar Pradesh. Now remember that detail, because that shared territory is both a strength and, as we're about to see, a huge vulnerability.
And the creatures that live here are just wow. We're talking about some seriously rare animals. You've got the critically endangered gharial. That's a type of crocodile with a super long skinny snout for catching fish. Then there's the red-crowned roofed turtle, also critically endangered. And even the endangered Ganges River dolphin. Every single one of them absolutely depends on those sandbanks to survive.
But you know how it goes. Wherever you have something precious, conflict is usually not far behind. So how in the world did this incredible ecosystem turn into a war zone?
The people at the center of this have a pretty intense nickname, but it's not one I made up. This phrase, modern dacoits, which basically means modern bandits, that comes straight from the Supreme Court of India. That's how they described the criminal syndicates that are tearing up the riverbed, illegally mining for sand. That tells you just how serious this is.
So how are they pulling this off? Well, you've got to get the picture of a couple guys with shovels out of your head. This is big business. These are highly organized operations. They are masters at exploiting those gaps between the 3 states we talked about, which makes policing them a nightmare. And what's driving all this? A massive construction boom all across North India that has an endless appetite for sand. I mean, get this. Sand is the second most used natural resource on Earth, right after water.
Now, obviously, this illegal mining hasn't gone unchallenged, but the response has exploded into a violent, escalating conflict for control of the river itself.
And if you look at how this has played out over the years, man, it has just gotten worse and worse. Back in 2017, you started seeing attacks on forest guards and police. Sometimes they were literally run down by trucks. Jump to 2023, and the syndicates are openly carrying semi-automatic weapons. It's insane. And even when one of the states tried to legalize some mining in 2026 to get a handle on it, the courts had to step in and block it because they knew just how dangerous the situation had become.
And this really shows you what a lopsided fight we're talking about. On one side, you've got the forest department. They are completely outgunned and under-resourced. On the other side, these mining syndicates, with better weapons, using GPS and mobile apps, and a whole network of local lookouts to track the patrols. It is not a fair fight, not even close.
But here's where the story gets really complicated. Because if you just paint this as a simple good guys versus bad guys situation, you're missing the most important part of the puzzle. You have to ask why. Why is this happening in the first place?
I mean, really think about that for a second. Why would local communities, people who have lived alongside this river for generations, team up with violent criminal gangs? Why would they turn against the very authorities trying to protect their environment? Well, the answer? It comes down to economics and desperation. It's a really tragic cycle when you break it down. You see, the land around the Chambal is really rugged. It's not good for farming. That means young people there have almost no options for a decent job. So who steps into that void? The sand mafia. They offer work. And for these young men, this isn't about ecology, it's about putting food on the table. And pretty soon, they find themselves protecting the very operations that are destroying the river.
And the result is this incredibly twisted dynamic. When the forest officials show up to stop the mining, they aren't seen as heroes trying to save the river. They're seen as the enemy, threatening the only paycheck in town. This creates a huge amount of public anger, which gives the syndicates the perfect social cover to hide behind.
So this leads us to the most important part of the whole story. If just using force isn't working, then what's the answer? How do you actually solve a problem that's buried this deep in a community?
You know, the biggest lesson from the Chambal's violent history seems to be this.
You cannot shoot your way out of a problem that is, at its heart, about economics. Crackdowns just make the local communities angrier, which only helps the syndicates in the long run.
So the only real way forward seems to be a two-part approach. First, and this is the big one, you have to create other jobs, real, legal, sustainable ways for local people to make a living. You have to give them a better option. Then you pair that with smart, fair law enforcement that goes after the kingpins, the guys at the top, not just the desperate foot soldiers at the bottom.
Ultimately, the conflict in the Chambal makes you think about a much bigger question. All that sand is being hauled out to build the cities of tomorrow, but that progress is literally destroying another world. Which leaves us with a really tough question, doesn't it? How do we find a way to build our world without completely destroying another?
You can download the complete notes of this video from the pinned comment below. If this video helped, do like and subscribe to the BriefCase for daily visual explanations.